they have their constituents calling them morning, afternoon, and night. Every member represents a particular constituency, so this is directly something that affects them. And I want to commend you for the steps you have taken, very proactive so far. But I believe that we must all work together to address the problems that are at hand.
So for the House, 1 day is a day too long in terms of delay. 1 day is a day too long. And we just want to hear from you and see if we can keep this thing moving. The leader of the House here was charged, together with the chairman of Foreign Affairs, to also follow up and, if need be, get on the plane and just to basically supervise and make sure that our members, our citizens who we represent, irrespective of what anybody says out there, who we represent, who are calling us morning, afternoon, night, calling, just to give them some kind of moral booster. The House decided, that the leader of the House and the chairman, to let them know that they have not been forgotten, to go with you if we can quickly address this situation and get the planes out there, and to make sure that things are done and our students and our citizens are brought back. They're still here, because even at the time when the House made that resolution, it was shortly after that we found out that the Ukraine airports had been closed. But I believe the border states, Poland and the rest of them, their borders are open. Visas have been obtained, from what I hear, or they've been given automatic visas, from what I hear. But you can clarify these things, because you are more hands-on. You are more hands-on than we are. So that's it. That's basically what this is about. And if there's anything the House can do, or you think the House can do to even accelerate or speed it up or make it easier for you, we'll be more than happy to do that. The bottom line is for those who are willing to come back, for the government to be seen bringing back its citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, and all the honorable chairs and members and countries did not believe that the Russians would invade. The Americans made it clear. President Biden, from day one, was saying that not only are they going to invade, it's a question of when. Then he said it's any moment now. President Putin was saying they're not going to invade. We were in touch with our ambassador there. I was on the phone with him almost every day. I said to him, should we start evacuating? He said, no, everything is perfectly calm, life is going on as normal, and that there's no need to panic and start evacuating. Some days later, I would go back to him almost every day, and there was a BBC program where they interviewed Nigerian students. The students said that everything was normal in Kiev and other parts, that they don't even know that there's a problem. It's just like when they put on the TV, that they even know that there might be something in the offing. So that was the situation. And also, the Ukrainian government did not want people to panic. They wanted to show that the situation was normal. They didn't want people to start leaving and so forth. Now, a lot of our Nigerians there are students. If they left, they would never be able to come back to carry on their studies. That would be clear. So they stayed. The missions, all the countries there used to meet regularly, the diplomats, sharing notes. And there was a consensus that they would just stay and be calm. Nobody thought that the Russians would be coming in. The Americans evacuated, the British evacuated, but almost nobody else did. Well, of course, the Russians moved in by surprise. So I was in touch with the ambassador. The first thing was to get in touch with all the Nigerians there, set up a hotline with the embassy at the center, and start directing. We were in touch with the Ukrainian authorities, and our hope was that we could go in immediately and start evacuating. But of course, the Russians attacked some airfields, and the airspace was closed. So that was not an option at all. The advice that we gave, our embassy did very well. They really did extremely well. The number was out there, and we're trying to keep in touch with people and reassure people at home. Then, of course, the next thing was some people now started, including Ukrainians, to move towards the borders. Kiev is very close to the Polish borders and so forth. And the Nigerians also joined. There are about 5,600 Nigerian students there, and maybe a total of about 8,000 Nigerians in Ukraine. And those who were close, because there are a number of borders around Ukraine. Ukraine is the second largest country, geographically landmass, in Europe. So it's a big country. And so depending on where you were in Ukraine, which were the nearest borders. So initially, the advice was to stay put. But of course, once you started bombardments and things like that, people panicked, which is normal and understandable, and started moving to the borders. So all this was happening very, very quickly. They started moving to the borders. I was in touch with all the ambassadors. Our ambassador, as you say, and I'll come to that now, came back for Congress, as many ambassadors of ours did, the political ambassadors. And so he was caught out here. And then, of course, nobody, when the invasion started, he turned around and started heading back. But he was also, and I was also working with him, in contact with his officers in the embassy, and they were particularly good because even while he was here, he had already organized for them to go to the borders, to the Polish borders, with luxury buses, luxurious buses, to start meeting Nigerians who were coming from the border positions, posts, and taking them to Warsaw. Now, as I said, it's a big country, so very, very quickly, there was a huge backlog of people, almost 37 kilometers long, waiting to get into through the border positions. I was hearing stories of discrimination, that some Africans were not being allowed through, and Nigerians, and of course in social media, all these things were being shown. So I called whom I know, the foreign minister of Ukraine. And I didn't expect to get him, so I was very pleasantly surprised that I was able to get him. We had a long discussion. He told me it has nothing to do with race, but that he would go and check and come back to me very, very quickly. That as far as he understands, that the directives given to the border police and so on were to let through every foreigner, and that the only people they were not to let through were Ukrainians between the age of 18 and 16. So, and true to his word, 15 minutes later or 20 minutes later, he called me back. He said he has looked into it and that they reiterated the directions to the border patrols and that there's chaos in the borders, as one can understand, and that's what's putting everybody on edge. And but that he can guarantee me that it's nothing whatsoever to do with with race, and that this was the instructions they had. Then of course people now started also moving to the Romanian border, and I was in touch with our ambassador there, gave directives to send people to the border positions and start picking up the Nigerians who were coming through there, and ditto with Slovakia as well, where Nigerians started also going to. And so immediately we now started making plans for an airlift from those countries. The minister told me that, well, it was not advisable for people to be in the open air, but the fact of the matter is that, the movement had started and there was no way you could stop that. And so the next phase was, first of all, to try and meet them when they arrived in those countries, provide shelter for them and food. The Polish mission was doing that. There were Nigerians in those countries who have also volunteers who have been extremely helpful as well. But we know that in some of the border posts, especially the Polish one, it was long, tens and tens of kilometers long, so it was a bit chaotic. But then we got in touch with the Polish authorities, and to ensure that, because again they said, that the Polish authorities were being difficult with Nigerians, and so we're working with them to ensure that all the Nigerians who come through, they assured us that even Nigerians without documents were allowed to come through, because unfortunately, there are some Nigerians who were, undocumented and irregular, but they were still allowing them in. Then there were, of course, some Nigerians who were in the eastern part of Ukraine, close to the Russian border. We spoke to one or two of them, told them not to panic, to stay, if they can, stay in the basements, as the minister had advised, not to be close to the windows, and if possible, to stay down in the basement. I asked the ambassador to stay in touch with them. A lot of them are students, young people, to keep their morale up as we look for, ways of, reaching them or making arrangements with them. Some of them were in Sumy, which is closer to the Russian border. So I asked the ambassador to please try and get transit pass for them, so that they can dash to the Russian border and start coming out through there. So we, very quickly, as you correctly said, we were in touch with the chairman of Air Peace. At the time, he indicated that he had two planes, 777 and an Airbus, ready to go. And I asked him that hopefully we would like to go today, Monday. But of course, we had to also see with Mr. President very quickly. Last week, I went, saw him with the Chief of Staff, and he approved that we should go ahead with an airlift. And so we negotiated with Air Peace, and I asked the ambassadors in those countries to give us an exact figure, or at least an approximate figure of the number of Nigerians who had made it to the respective countries, so we can now, decide on how to go and pick them up. And so the latest we had, it was clear that Monday would not be feasible, so we have tentatively fixed for Wednesday. The idea is Romania is going to be the hub, and there are about 1,000 already that we're estimating to pick up from Romania. And then you have Slovakia, about 200, Poland also about 250, and Hungary, the same figure. There are about 150 going into, wanting to go through Russia, that we have asked students, our ambassadors, to try and get transit permits for. So essentially, that's where we are today, moving into that next phase. of getting these people back. Of course, some of them don't want to come back to the country, but the point is also that we've given a commitment to these transit countries that have given us timelines for the refugees to stay in their countries, and so we also have an obligation to ensure that within that timeline that they come back. I was in touch with the Deputy Director General of the IOM, International Organization for Migration, and following our discussions, she took it up to the board and everything, and she's now got permission to now send out officers of the IOM to the various border posts to facilitate and to help the various refugees, and in particular Nigerian ones, because we've made an official request to them. So this is where we are. We're really doing everything possible to ensure that come Wednesday, we start deploying planes to go and get them back. So this is it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Satisfied that you've been very proactive. And like I said earlier, we just need to know where and how, or if we need to come in. Let me go back, first of all, to the issue of the ambassador that was in Nigeria. I don't understand how, in a moment of crisis, which started last week, he was in Nigeria to get briefing. I mean, that's why we have communication system and all of that. I don't think he needed to be physically, even for psychological reasons. If the students there heard that the ambassador was not even in the country, was in Nigeria, it deflates their morale, and I think moving forward, I think there should be a station. Any briefing that requires, which of course there will be a need for briefing from their boss, could have been done, over the phone. I'm glad you've corrected the impression that many Nigerians had that Ukraine was not allowing Africans to leave the country, because the impression, or the conclusion, almost irresistible conclusion from that, was that they were probably needed for conscription into their army, and I'm glad that is unless they were hyping the situation, and for the foreign minister to have gone to verify and reissue the order. Maybe there was some element or grain of truth, but I'm glad that that's not even the issue anymore. But it's always better to err on the side of caution. Honorable Minister, moving forward, I want you to work closely with the National Assembly, if need be, for us to have some kind of legislation or policy whereby we don't have this, what do you call it now, fire brigade approach, or we're caught flat-footed. I think we need to have a setup by law or by ingrained in the foreign affairs policy, and that will have to do with you if we can work together, where we're in a state of readiness at any point in time, where we need to evacuate our citizens, because it's happened one time too many. It happened in South Africa. It happened where we had to even lean on a private citizen to, quote and unquote, for want of a better word, loan us or borrow us his plane. I think if we can, at this time, urge the executive to come forth with some kind of supplementary budget. I don't know the details. If NEMA's mandate includes external evacuation, right? If NEMA's mandate includes that, then the question is, when I was talking about supplementary budget, have they been equipped with what is necessary for them to be able to execute their mandate? For instance, I'm sure there are planes. We also when America was evacuating people who are not even their own citizens from Afghanistan, I think there are special purpose-built planes. I don't know, that we can try and purchase, that will be there, ready for evacuation of our students or citizens if any such thing happens. And I'm glad you mentioned NEMA. So if NEMA working with you, if we don't have those things, there's no point giving them a mandate and they cannot execute their mandate. So what is needed for them to execute their mandate, please let's hurry up and bring it to the National Assembly, and so that we can quickly appropriate for that. The students, we need to also interrogate the Ukrainian government. Well, when I think I heard you say that some students could not, if they left school, they would not be able to come back to school. And I think we should try and interrogate them further on that. Whether they like it or not, they're in a state of war. How can you say students who leave school during a state of war cannot come back to school? Maybe that's their policy, but I think we should try and interrogate that a little bit further. So just to once again thank you very much. But just to, have we hired enough buses to bring our students to the borders? The answer is yes. So we can tick that box. We've seen videos of them starving in cold weather, not hungry. Do we have some arrangements in terms of feeding and blankets and all of that? So the answer is yes. So that's
I mean, we requested, and we're trying to get resources to the missions.
Okay.
So we're addressing that.
Okay. So, but these resources, how soon do you think we can get them? Thanks for reminding me. So,
So the point I was even trying to remind you, the embassies outside Nigeria, not necessarily through the agencies. So in times of this nature, times of war or emergencies,
absolutely.
you are now left running shelter-skelter to fund foreign missions.
Yes,
so
that's
how do
it.
you address this emergency if you don't provide direct funding to agencies of this nature?
Yes.
So that they can be able to address emergencies of this
So
nature.
we
And I hear a lot of stories, people...
A case in point. Honourable Minister, you talked about a timeline. I was not even aware that there was a timeline for our students by the host communities over there for refugees. So what is this timeline so that we know what we're working?
Different countries have...
Starting from when? Like, for instance, the 5 days, the 48 hours started when?
Yeah, no, when they get in, they have...
So their visa is for that long?
Not even so much for the visas. It's just to make sure that somebody else's problem doesn't become theirs. I think that's basically it.
With the preparations under the circumstances and how their hands are tied, I think the minister has done a good job, and whatever we need to compliment, we will add. But I think it's important that we must be in a state of readiness at all times, and let's not be caught flat-footed or whatever. Again, it's happened too many times. We need to have planes that are on the ready. We need to have all those things on the ready in case this should happen. We don't pray that this happens again, but we live in a world of conflicts. So we need to be on the ready set. And like I said, chairman and leader, these people are our constituents. You need to get your hands dirty as well. So I don't know, whenever they're going, you need to be involved, irrespective of what anybody says out there. This is a collaborative effort. Government is about everybody. It's about everybody. The embassy will take charge, or rather the foreign ministry will take charge, but you oversight, you have oversight, and that's what our law says. And part of your oversight will be to make sure these things are done properly. If you need to go with them, with the leader of the house. I found it very interesting when I heard some reports on the news that what's the house going to do? What's the leader of the house going to do? And I'm like, on one hand, if the leader doesn't do anything, or the house doesn't do anything, they're the ones you will call, and you say all sorts that they don't do anything, and then they take the flag, say, okay, let's try and get this thing done, and then so you can't lose to win or win to lose, however it is said. Either way, but we will continue to do our work. Correct? Honorable Minister, thank you so much. Thank you for all that you're doing. And if there's anything else we need to do moving forward, if there's any obstacle that you run into, please call the minister, call the leader, call me directly so that we can quickly, activate whatever we need to activate. Thank you so much.
We've come to the end of this meeting. very short but impactful meeting. I'd like to thank you